Here with Hannah from the Calais Food Collective,
Hi.
obviously based in Calais. Hi, Hannah. She's going to explain to us tonight a little bit about what's happening in Calais at the moment, how they're helping, how many people are in Calais at the moment, and generally what's been happening on the ground. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah to explain to you what's happening. Thank
Hi. So currently in Calais, we are working with about 1.8 thousand people living in makeshift camps around the area. There are a large amount of unaccompanied minors, single women, and now we've seen a big increase in families over the last 2 months. Our latest numbers show that there's around 20 young children under 12 and 7 children under 2. So there's really, just a lot of people. People at the moment are living, like I said, in makeshift camps. Some people have tents that they're able to stay in, other people don't. And the situation is really, really difficult. We are currently serving food across a few different points, as well as water. Over the last 2 months, there's been a number of really serious evictions that have displaced people further throughout Calais. So whereas before people were generally centred in one main camp, now people have been spread out all across the town, making access to food and water really, really difficult. We are also currently looking at restarting our distributions in Grand Sainte, which is about 20 minutes drive away, where there's a population of around 400 people with really high numbers of families and young children. So there's.
I can just interrupt for one moment, Hannah. I promise not to do this, but I will. But do you know why there's so many families and children right now?
We actually don't really have an explanation. The different people who are present in Calais just varies, and there's not always an explanation. What we are seeing is quite a large number of people coming from Germany who have had asylum in Germany or who've been working in Germany since 2015, when Germany took a huge amount of refugees in. But now those asylum grants have run out, and so people are moving again. And that is one of the potential reasons why we're seeing more people here at the moment. The different nationalities that we have in the camps here are predominantly Sudanese, Eritrean, and Ethiopian, as well as people from Chad, Mali, or Guinea, and people from Afghanistan, people from Iraq. Those are the main kind of countries that are represented in Calais. And then in the camp in Dunkirk, we have a much more predominantly Kurdish community. So over the past few months, I was saying earlier that there's been a large amount of evictions, pushing people into different places across the town. Alongside of this, there's also been a number of steps taken by the local authorities to try and stop our distributions and stop people receiving aid. The last of these is a ban on distribution of food and water within the city centre. This affects directly one of our main distributions currently. The particular state order that was given was that a large number of streets which were named are concerned by this ban. All of them are either past or present distribution sites for NGOs on the ground. So what we've done over the past 2 weeks is to move our distribution site to somewhere that is not on the ban list, with the hope that that would be reasonable and okay, and that we would be able to continue distributing. However, that hasn't really been the case. We've seen that there's been a huge amount of police presence around our distributions, But also the police are not necessarily very well informed about exactly where the ban is applicable to. So most nights we have to carry a copy of the ban statement with us, as well as maps to prove that we're not in one of the areas concerned, and are subject to continuous ID checks and vehicle checks. All of that making for quite a difficult distribution. We've also had a lot of feedback from people that we support that they now are scared of coming to our distributions, scared of accessing water and food because of the constant police presence there, and they don't know whether it's safe for them to come to our distributions.
So my understanding is that the state isn't really providing food at the moment. That they are, but they're not providing very much. That the police have moved all of these people on from the camps that they were in, as much as they were, like the tents that were being given on the outskirts of Calais, and they forced them into the city centre because they keep moving them on, but they have nowhere to go to, and now they're stopping them from getting any food and water in the city centre.
Yeah.
Is that kind of fair, or is that not quite right?
So there is a state distribution. There's actually 2 state distributions every day. However, they're in incredibly densely populated area, especially one of them. And the feedback that we've had from people accessing these distributions is that there isn't always enough food. And we've had a particularly large amount of feedback from families with children saying that they don't feel safe accessing these distributions because of the number of people who are there. And that's making access, particularly for women and children, really, really difficult. Also, because it's such a big camp where this food distribution is, a lot of people choose to not live in that small space with so many people, and so have to live elsewhere, hence why people have moved to the city centre. All of the old sites where people did used to live have been completely fenced off, and people no longer have access to them. And access to water is becoming really, really difficult as people move away from the old water point, which is still running, but is really, really far from where most people are now living. Yeah. So,
coming off mute. Yeah, got it. So in that environment, you've been carrying on doing your distributions, and I presume that other NGOs, other charities have as well, in the area. You obviously fought back against the ban by the police, and that went to a court case recently. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So on Friday, there was a court case at the Administrative Court of Lille, after an appeal against the ban was made by 12 of the NGOs on the ground here. We lost the court case. We found this out on Tuesday. One of the reasons stated for us losing the court case is that it's 4 kilometres from the city centre to where the state food distribution is, and that was a reasonable amount for a person to walk to access food and water, was the reason given by the judge. We are now going to be taking this to a higher court. The appeal was sent off last night, and further testimonies are being sent off today to try and appeal it again. And we will keep doing this.
It's just unbelievable that they are stopping food from being distributed. And anyway, none of us are surprised. We know that this happens in France and in the north of France. Do you think over the last few months, obviously everyone's been impacted by COVID, and in fact the Calais Food Collective was set up because of the lockdown, because of COVID, and to provide food for people. I don't think that the impact of COVID has been necessarily on illness amongst the camp residents, but it has had other knock-on effects in terms of the food distributions, how people live. What have been the effects of lockdown on what is essentially an incredibly vulnerable community? And how have the authorities treated that?
So when lockdown was announced in France, the state distribution scaled back their distributions to instead of hot meals, just packs of for making sandwiches, which was really, really insufficient for the people who were able to access those distributions. A large number of the NGOs on the ground had to pull out of Calais for some months, especially those who had bigger teams or people from different countries. It wasn't feasible for them to stay open, and that's where Calais Food Collective was created, was in that environment. So people's access to food and water was severely reduced during those times. We also saw a huge amount of police harassment going up, as there was less people on the ground to observe what was going on. There was not as many people on the ground observing evictions, for example. So we had a lot of reports of them being much more violent than they have been previously. People were, for example, not able to get on a bus to go to the hospital, which was the only way to access the hospital and healthcare, because not everyone had a mask, and obviously masks are mandatory in public transport. But just more generally, there is absolutely no way for people who are living in these conditions to do all the things that we were being told to do. Washing regularly, even just your hands, is an incredibly difficult thing to do when you live in one of these camps. Social distancing is impossible. People live packed in tents of up to 4 or 5 people in a 2-man tent, and people are all living and sharing everything. So everything that we were told to do at that time, the people on the living in Calais were not able to do.
And they haven't been taken care of by the state at all in any way. In fact, if anything, it got worse.
Exactly. There was some small amount of accommodation was made available for people. However, access to it was quite difficult from the feedback that we got. And a lot of people, when they arrived, chose not to stay because of the conditions in which these places were that they found in these places.
Yeah, exactly. And do you actually know of any cases of COVID in the camps themselves?
Since lockdown, there has not been any, as far as I'm aware, confirmed cases.
Do you think that's maybe because they can't get tested, or do people generally not seem ill?
It's really, really difficult to say. There have been tests available. Red Cross and the Belgian Monde have been working to get people tested, but obviously we don't have results of this kind of thing. Another way in which COVID has really impacted the situation is, as we were just talking about, this ban on distributions. One of the reasons stated is that distributions bring people together and that it makes a big risk for people. However, if people don't have food or water, it's even more of a risk. And we do absolutely everything we can when we're on the field to protect the people that we're serving.
Exactly, and because they're sharing tents anyway, they might be 4 to 5 person to a tent, and they can't socially distance. It's a ridiculous claim anyway. Exactly. I mean, of course, everybody here is going to agree on that. The problem is that the authorities don't. So it's just we keep fighting, we keep battling on. Do you have anything else sort of that you want to add at this point? Do you have any messages for people that are listening, ways that we might be able to help you, the help that you actually need right now? Because I know that you're all working incredibly hard.
I mean, yeah, one of the things that we do need, and I know that it is a really big ask, is we do need financial support. Our funds are very, very low. We've had to suspend some of our services the last few weeks. They're back up and running now, and we aim to be able to carry it on more sustainably, but funding is always what we need. If you're able to commit to coming out to volunteer with us, that would be incredible. We're really, really looking for people. You can email us at Calais Food Collective, and also just talking to people about the situation here, because we really feel that lots of people don't know about what's going on, and it is the UK border, and so it involves everyone. And yeah, being as vocal as you can about the situation on the ground.